You're watching Press of World News live from Tehran. Time now for the news review section. U.S. President Joe Biden is defending his decision to visit Saudi Arabia and meet its crown prince, despite criticism that he's abandoning his own stated concerns about a kingdom's human rights record. Biden has written in an opinion piece for Washington Post that his upcoming visit aims to strengthen a strategic partnership with Riyadh. It says that the U.S. will use Saudi Arabia's vital energy resources to mitigate the impact of the war in Ukraine on global supplies, and that amidst surging fuel costs and inflation at home. But a visit goes against Biden's repeated pledges to make Saudi Arabia pay for the killing and dismemberment of dissident journalist and U.S. resident Jamal Khashoggi. The Biden administration has released intelligence findings showing that Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman masterminded Khashoggi's murder. Isn't that interesting? Now, let me invite two guests to ask their opinion on this. So, Elijah Magnier, journalist and political analyst, joining me from Marseille. Ryan Dawson, geopolitical analyst, is joining me from Osaka, Japan. Good to see you, gentlemen. And now, Elijah, this is what Biden already said. Saudi Arabia should pay, and he's making Saudi Arabia pay by paying for what he wants, and it's not for dismemberment of Jamal Khashoggi. So, doesn't this mean that money comes in the Western style, U.S. style, fight and claim of democracy and human rights, freedom of expression, freedom of the press, and all that? Money comes before all of these rights, right?
Thank you for having me.
Sure.
Absolutely right. We remember the letter that Rex Tillerson, the former Secretary of State, received when he came to his function, and he was advised that human right is not used against the friends of the US, even if they hold dictatorship regimes, but against those who do not submit to the US. That is the general policy of the United States of America. And what I am surprised to hear Biden writing and defending his visit to Saudi Arabia. When he was a senator, he was a vice president, and during his campaign, he lied when he said, I am going to behave with Saudi Arabia as a pariah. He knows very well that Saudi Arabia has been financing most of the US wars, particularly in the Middle East, supporting Israel's war against Lebanon and other countries, and financing the war in Afghanistan against the Soviet in the 80s, and creating all the Takfiri groups to the request of the US. This is what the Saudis officials said throughout the decades, and confirmed the role of the US. So this is not new to Joe Biden, who became president and who took a decision by waving the flag of democracy, human rights values, when he knows very well that he needs the Saudi money, particularly in this situation when he doesn't want to reveal that his sanction and the sanctions that are imposed by the West against Russia has changed the security of food and energy in the world. So he did not lie only about Saudi Arabia, he also lied about the deal with Iran, the JCPOA, and about other things. So it is not surprising, because this is a deja vu of the US policy toward countries that they think is good to establish a relationship with them, like Donald Trump did when he said, I love dictators.
Okay. Now, Ryan, how do you look at this? I mean, given all what President Biden said before he became president, and even in the early days of his time in the Oval Office, he was talking about against Saudi Arabia and doing this and that. What is it that pushes him to get closer to Saudi Arabia? And MBS, the U.S. intelligence apparatus, has evidence that he was the mastermind of Khashoggi's murder.
Well, when you look at Biden's total career, when he was a senator, when he's on the Armed Service Committee, and then as vice president with Obama when they invaded Libya, and aided Saudi Arabia the entire time contractually too for their war in Yemen. There was a brief moment where they turned against Saudi Arabia, not because of human rights abuses in Yemen or anything else, they were murdering journalists. It was because they didn't want Saudi Arabia buying air defense systems from Russia. And so that was the only time they ever gave lip service to suddenly we care about human rights. After that issue was resolved, it's right back to it. Biden is desperate for Saudi oil. He has sanctions on Iran and Venezuela and Russia, and he's discovering that in addition to all the money they printed for COVID-19 and the war in Ukraine, that they're having shortages based not only on one thing. It's not just the war in Ukraine, it's all those things. But they're having shortages. They're having shortages on diesel, fertilizer, and gas. And he even dipped into the oil reserve, the strategic oil reserve of the United States, and yet the price of gasoline didn't go down because he didn't use it domestically, he sold it to China. This guy has no principles. He doesn't, and you want to talk about human rights abuses. There you go. China or Saudi Arabia, it doesn't matter. The Israelis butcher Palestinians, they give them millions of dollars every day. It's hypocrisy bingo. The U.S. is guilty of human rights abuses itself, much less its allies and all the dictatorships it aligns with. And so for him to act like this was a reason to just wag his finger at Saudi Arabia, there were no real consequences. And they're still buying the oil, and he's still chugging with MSB. But I don't think, even with all that, he's not going to get the oil because Saudi Arabia is at maximum capacity right now. So they've really bitten off more than they can chew this time.
Okay. Funny thing is, he was not even willing to have a meeting with this MBS guy. Okay, now let's, gentlemen, let's take a look at social media reactions, and I'll come back to you with more questions. We had the first post saying that, will the Biden administration do anything to help women's rights activist Lujain al-Halhul, who is facing a trial in Saudi Arabia? Chances are low. The West loves to talk about liberty and democracy until there is oil up for grabs. Now, Al-Fasal says that Biden's popularity is at its worst, and his outrageous actions towards Saudi Arabia cannot be rewarded with deals. Everyone knows that after the midterm elections, it will turn into a lame duck, so there will be no progress in his visit. And there's a post by John D. that goes, Biden defends decision to visit Saudi Arabia. It is my job to keep our country strong and secure. Well, that's true. But you kowtow to other countries and beg for offerings after your policies gut America. All right, now let me go to our guests and ask them their opinion about some of these comments posted online. Elijah, this one was interesting. It says that everyone knows that after the midterm elections, Biden will turn into a lame duck. So, I mean, it's that person means that actually this is a waste of time, what Biden is trying to do in his visit to Saudi Arabia. Let's have your thoughts on that.
I think Biden is only trying to get oil from the Saudis. This is the objective of his visit, although he's trying to make it look like he's creating more rapprochement between Israel and Saudi Arabia, which is something that has been going on for some time. So what is more interesting in what he said are points that are of the interest of the region, when he said he preferred that the region come together through democracy, diplomacy, and cooperation, rather than being apart through conflict, undermining the fact that only the US brought conflict to the region by supplying Saddam Hussein in his war against Iran, by occupying Afghanistan, occupying Iraq, still insisting in staying in Iraq, occupying part of Syria, trying to create a failed state in Syria. So all that, Biden is really telling us what the US is doing when the countries of the region can sort out themselves the problem. So he is coming for one particular reason, telling us that the objective is to bring peace to the region, which is not true, bringing $500 million to the Palestinians, forgetting about the Madrid, the Oslo agreement, and the right of the Palestinians to return to their land and to rehab their occupied territory. Everything he's bringing is false. And when he's saying I want to make sure that Russia can't have its way, and then to stand against China. Well, China has excellent relationship with the Middle East, also Russia, particularly country in the Middle East who refuse to condemn Russia and to stand with the US. So basically he's coming for his own interest, and he's coming only to make sure that Saudi Arabia could provide him with oil, which I doubt that he's going to get the 700,000 or 1 million barrel of oil per day to compensate a little bit the stupid sanction that the West imposed on Russia.
All right. And Ryan, we also have people talking about women's rights activists in Saudi Arabia. That definitely shouldn't be one of the topics that Joe Biden is going to talk about, although that is human rights violations on the part of the Riyadh administration. There are some other issues like the crackdown on stifling the voice of dissent, the Shia population in Qatif region, eastern part of and you name it. Let's have your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it would be, but it would be nice, but it's really not up to the U.S. to deal with women's rights in Saudi Arabia. They have no leverage when they continue to give them weapons contracts and buy oil. Why is Saudi Arabia going to change its behavior on any social policy? They talked about women's rights in Afghanistan for over 20 years and then just abandoned them to the Taliban and left weapons for the Taliban. Is now one of the wealthiest armies in the world based on what the West left behind. And they were never going to Afghanistan about women's rights. That was just a pretext, something that sounds good to say, because that sounds a lot better than we're going to steal a lot of opium and use black market budgets to finance terrorists. You can't say that. You have to say women's rights, human rights, something like this. If they cared about human rights, why are they subsidizing the annexation of Palestine, and why did they put sanctions on Iraq to murder hundreds of thousands of children? Why did they nuke cities in Japan? Why did they, the list goes on and on. And sanctions kill. And some can get around them through black markets and things better than others, but it is a farce to pretend like the U.S. cares at all about women's rights in Saudi Arabia.
Okay. Elijah Magner in Marseille, Ryan Dawson in Osaka, Japan. Thank you so much for your contribution and insights. And thank you for watching this episode of the News Review on Press TV.